Hello, everybody. I am Suri, and I'm here with Cremechiss's Movie of the Week. I'm a tad bit late, so I do apologize. And I also want to thank everyone for getting us over the 1,000 subscribers. And I cannot express my gratitude and my love to all of you who have been watching us grow, have been watching us struggle with this channel, and, create as many recommendations as possible to interest you and to keep you involved with this channel. And the fact that you give us this kind of love and attention so early on makes me filled with so much love for each and every one of you that is listening to us out there. And as a person who loves cinema, this week is very, very, very special to me because I witnessed, a couple of weeks ago, the Oscars where an Indian song, won. And it first of all, the fact that it was nominated or the fact that it won an award was not what made me proud as an Indian. What made me proud was that a movie that was made in South India had so much global recognition, where everybody was talking about it, where everybody was discussing about the nuances of filmmaking because of it, that it made me take into account the amount of gratitude I have for the Indian film industry. And it made me think about all the filmmakers in India who I get to achieve, their global recognition, their global platforms, however that may be. And it made me realize that every movie that comes from India comes with so much of heart and so much of love. And it really makes me feel so happy to be in an era where I get to witness firsthand the beauty and the enormity of Indian cinema. And keeping that in mind, I would like to suggest a movie to you, which is perhaps one of the most important movies to Indian cinema. And the reason I say that is because Indian cinema has a very quirky, very interesting origin story. And it's not as simple as a bunch of people deciding to make a movie. You have to understand that Indian filmmaking and Indian cinema, the Indian industry, did not exist till 1911, and that was at the peak of the British rule in India. So anyone who created an industry in India at that point of time, anyone who created a company, who created jobs in India, was a pioneer. And this kind of stems from anyone who worked in any field. It didn't matter if it was science or math, engineering, and of course, filmmaking. So 1911 is an important year to Indian movie making because it gave birth to the Indian film industry. And that happened because of one particularly important man. And his name was Dada Saheb Phalke. And he was a very, very important entity to the Indian movie universe, not just because he's the father of Indian cinema, but also because he took a step that not many would even fathom, that not many would even consider in a time where people were building machines and investing in engineering and sciences. There was a man who kind of looked around and said, India is a country of millions of stories, perhaps even a billion stories. And if this country has seen folklore, has seen story driven dance forms, has seen story driven poetry, like pretty much everything in India which falls in the creative sciences or the creative arts, it involves storytelling of some form. And it doesn't matter if it stems from personal stories or mythical stories. It is about a story. And India specifically, even the songs, even the folk songs that were sung depicted some kind of storytelling. So a man in the stature of Dada Sahib, in the power and in the influence of Dada Sahib, had the idea to introduce cinema to India. And he stumbled upon it. It wasn't a lifelong plan. He wasn't born with this idea. He stumbled upon it and then he investigated and researched it. And that's how the Indian film industry came to exist. And the movie I want to talk about today is Harishandrachi Factory. It was created by a very talented Paresh Mukashi, and he is, in my opinion, a very, very important Indian filmmaker because he tells us the stories that we don't know about. He talks to us about the aspects of storytelling which people tend to forget about because it is not as glamorous, or it may kind of fall in the cliche of, oh, this is going to be a biography about the father of Indian cinema. No, Paresh Mukashi decided, I'm not going to create a biographical cinema and create a sympathetic protagonist, a sympathetic hero. In fact, what he did was he created Harishandrachi Factory. I think the movie came out in 2009, and he created this movie in a time where it was very common to have music and musicals and dance. And if you've seen RRR, it has a fantastic dance sequence, as we all know. Natu Natu reigned the charts for a long, long time because of the beat and then the dance accompaniment that went along with it. So there was so much of buzz around creating something musical that it shocks me even today that the movie I'm going to talk about is not a musical. That Harishandrashi Factory had an amazing background score. And when I say amazing background score, it was quirky, it was fun, it was upbeat, it was way ahead of its time. And but it wasn't a musical. There was no music, there was no dance numbers. And 2009 is the time where, item numbers, which, if you're not familiar with Indian cinema, were extremely popular, still are, where, very beautiful, alluring woman will, come in and kind of dance to these amazing beats, which are very, like, you feel like you have to get up and dance. You have to hit the club if you listen to that song. This movie did not have that. And the reason this movie did not have that was because this was about cinema and Indian cinema in the year of 1911. And 1911 cinema anywhere in the world, regardless of whether it was India or not, did not have sound. So how can you introduce song and dance in an era where movie making didn't even have sound? So he decided that he was going to stay true to the script, true to the protagonist, not introduce item numbers to kind of attract audiences, in I guess I would say a false way, because Harishandrashi Factory is not about glamour. It's about love and compassion and craziness for for movies and for making movies. And Harishandrashi Factory is a movie that I always return to when I have had a rough day, when I have had a tough time, and it doesn't matter what phase of my life I have been in. I have always returned to this movie to remind myself that everything can be an uphill battle, everything can be a struggle, or everything can be an opportunity to build on something new, to create something fantastic. And I think that is the beauty of this movie. So this movie is about, like I said before, Dada Saheb Phalke, and it begins on the date of 14th April 1911. And we get to understand why the movie is called Harishandrachi Factory. So if anyone doesn't understand Marathi, I would recommend them watching it with the subtitles, which are available. And they have been very well translated, very easy to follow. Even the jokes are very well done. And anyone who doesn't understand the language, don't worry, just follow the translations and enjoy yourself and enjoy this movie for what it is, which is it is a delight to watch. So Harishandrachi Factory, factory meaning factory, if a warehouse where you build things, and Harishchandra is the name of a person that kind of is part of Indian folklore, who was a great devotee of the gods, and he was true to his word. He was loyal to his family, loyal to his kingdom, and he was a king of the kingdom of Ayodhya. And this man was just very, very aligned with his truth, and he never strayed away from it. So the movie is called Harishandrashi Factory because they're trying to call Dada Sahib Phalke Harishchandra, or King Harishchandra, where he had a kingdom which was the movie industry, and he stayed loyal to that kingdom. He never strayed away from the truth, and that is pretty much what this movie is about. It's about his factory of movies. So we get to see him kind of I think the first scene we see him, he is a magician and he's putting up a little show for a bunch of kids, and he has a quirky alter ego called Kirpa, which is the backwards of Farke. So if you understand, the Marathi script, it's not Phalke, but it's fa r k. So the backwards of it is k r pa, and he has this alter ego, which basically is so interesting to me that they have included these little details. He always tried to separate himself from his project. Like he tried to keep his ego aside for any project, and that's why he was the one of the greats. That's why he was the father of Indian cinema. And he had this amazing scene where he's kind of showing magic and he sees like these two people kind of following him and he runs. And this is where we get to see him stumbling upon the theater. And we don't know why at this point he's hiding from these two men, but his son is accompanying him and he kind of hides into an alley and he finds a theater. And he is, I think it's called Picture Palace, and what we know today as the theater or the movies. And he gets over there and he looks around and he sees a lot of posters about a lot of movies that are playing. And his son gets really scared and says, I don't know if I want to watch this, because this, what if I don't understand? I'll be embarrassed. And he makes the statement which is so essential, I think, to any creator of any kind. It doesn't matter if you are an engineer or a movie maker. Just give this thought in your life for anything new that ever comes across your way. He says, "काय गमत आहे ती तरी बघू," which loosely translated, and I'm sorry if I botched this translation. So first, let's see what cool new thing this is, like what fun thing this could be. And if you don't like it, that's okay. But at least let's see what this could be, because this could be a fun thing. And his entire view in life is about trying to explore the impossible, trying to explore the unknown. And his whole life circles around that. So Dada Sahib Phalke, he is extremely important to Indian cinema, but he's also extremely important to the Indian Revolution, to the fight for freedom against the British rule, because he introduced an industry which basically employs millions of people every year in India. He created an opportunity for Indians to be able to develop stories and develop movies and production houses, and pretty much any movie that exists in India exists because of him, because of his efforts, and because of his struggles. So the movie kind of depicts, the funny things that happen to him as he's trying to build this industry, trying to build his production house, trying to make his first movie. And you will not, like, every scene will make you smile. You will never stop smiling. This movie is so well made that you will never ever stop smiling. You will always find yourself feeling, happy, rooting for this man who on the surface seems like he's completely lost his mind, but you will feel a kind of compassion for him, because you will understand that sometimes some of the greatest things happen because someone didn't give up. And that's him in a nutshell. So he is this, he's a family man. And he has two sons and a wife, and his wife's name is Saraswati. And I think we can establish from the movie, and I read a bunch about Saraswati Phalke, she would have to be the first editor of Indian cinema, because Dada Sai Phalke made the movies and she edited them. She developed the film. She did the cutting of the film. So she's the first editor, I guess, in many ways of Indian cinema. And at one point, he kind of takes her with him to watch the movie, and she watches this movie, a little scared, a little nervous, not sure what this is about, because at up until this moment, people have seen pictures. They have not seen moving pictures. They've not seen a video. And the fact that he walks into this tent and he sees this moving video and he doesn't get scared, he gets enamored, he gets obsessed. He's like, oh my gosh, I need to know how they do this. And Farke's background is that of printing. He worked in the press, so he I guess printed books and newspapers, uh, and pretty much anything that would be called hard print today. So he and his wife being introduced to this, and them very casually deciding over two movies, because the first movie they watch, his wife, just like him, is enamored, can't take her eyes off the screen, can't take her eyes off of the moving picture. And in the second movie, you see Dada Sahib turned his back to to kind of see where the image is coming from, to see the projector. And his wife is kind of like, gotten comfortable sitting on the floor and understanding how, the movie making is happening. So there is so much nuance to this movie, because you get to see that it's not yes, of course it is an overnight decision to make movies, but these are two people who have never experienced like this, something like this ever in their life. They just happened to know that this exists in their local neighborhood. They happen to stumble upon it, they happen to see it, and they happen to love it. So everything in this movie is about serendipity, where you don't intend to find something phenomenal, but you do. And when you find that something phenomenal, Saraswati Phalke and Dada Saheb Phalke are the greatest examples of, we have struck upon gold. Now let's make something great with it. And there's another thing that we should talk about. So the movies that Dada Saheb and his wife and his kids are watching, they are not produced in India. They have been produced by Britishers in Britain, and they don't have obviously any dialogue. Again, no sound, but they are based on stories which are familiar to British culture. So the fact that they're watching this movie, which is not made for them, which is not made to entertain an Indian audience, the fact that they're watching it at all, I mean, these are probably the first of the global cinema watchers, because they watch something for the love of cinema. They watched something because it was fascinating to see, and they must have understood the entire cultural context of it. But they watched it anyway because they had never seen something like this before, and their curiosity is what drove them to make a movie and to build an industry that we all know and love today. And there's something very interesting about the cast of this movie. So first of all, the, very talented cast. And there's Nandu Madhav playing Dada Saheb Phalke. There is Vibhavni Deshpande playing Saraswati Phalke. Sandeep Pathak playing Trimbak Telang, and uh, Bhav Kadam playing a very, very adorable role. You will see me talking about him very soon. And Jitendra Joshi, he has a small cameo as a man who is probably the only other Indian that's watching the movie along with Dada Saheb. And Rishikesh Joshi, who plays this teacher and this person who spreads knowledge about the the new era of Indians who are, Jamshedji Tata and Aryabhatta, who basically are have contributed to the concept of Indian knowledge through sciences and through inventions and innovation. And Rishikesh Joshi was in another fantastic film called Cycle. So any actors you see in this movie, you will see them kind of showing up in very crucial Marathi cinema. So these group of people, they are the usual suspects. They are always there when a very good story is there. So if you are looking to explore Marathi cinema, you could kind of look up, these actors. You could look up what they do in their entire lifespan as actors. There's another actor, Mayur Khan, who plays Sarunkhe, and he plays the first actor to portray a female role in Indian cinema. and he is phenomenal. There is nothing about this whole gambit of characters and actors that is anything less than phenomenal, because they care so deeply about their craft. They end up doing movies and stories just like this, something that is so special and so ahead of its time. Because again, this movie exists in an era where it is heavily underrated, and it does not get the kind of recognition and appreciation that it deserves. And I'm not sure why, but what I do know is Harishandrashi Factory deserves your undivided attention. It deserves your love. It deserves your support, because if you watch this movie, and if you are a person who is interested in understanding Indian cinema and you end up watching this movie, everything about Indian cinema will make so much more sense to you, because this movie kind of put the first stone, the first stepping stone of anything that involved Indian entertainment. And we have all these actors to thank for that, and all these wonderful people to thank for that, who have made this movie. um, there is a couple of other characters. There is Vaibhav Mange. He plays a fantastic role in in and out in the scenes with Dada Saheb's character, and the interactions between him and each and every character, even though they are supporting him, are very crucial and very critical to understanding how stories are written in Marathi cinema. And although there is a central character, and the minor characters kind of develop around him, these people are unique in the way they talk, in the way they express themselves, in the way they show their gambit of expressions. They are so established as actors, and they do it so naturally that you will not even realize that this is in fact acting. And that is, in my opinion, the greatness of this movie. I want to give a little more attention towards Vibhavdi Deshpande, who I think has played her character as Saraswati Phake so beautifully. It almost shocks me that she she isn't in more movies, and she isn't recognized more for her natural presence, and her just her voice can kind of light up the screen. You get to see that the character of Saraswati, she's not just loyal to her husband, because that is a very, a typical, I guess, wifely characteristic that you would see in a character like Saraswati's. But she's not just loyal to him; she's loyal to his goals, his aspirations, and above all of that, she's loyal to his honor. Because at one point in the movie, we find out that he was working in the printing press industry, and he kind of had a fallout with his partner. But he promised his partner that he will not build another printing industry to compete with him. And he just decided that he will do something else. And his wife, instead of complaining, just kind of goes like, whatever he decides, I'm okay with it, as long as he's happy doing what he's doing. And these are the characters that you immediately have access to within 10 minutes of the movie. And it'll make you realize that this is the reason these people were the creators of Indian cinema, because they were dedicated to the quality of humanity that people had at that time. And it was not necessarily a revolt against the Britishers, but it was a silent battle of its own, where two people were kind of building the blocks of what would, and when I say building the blocks, I mean truly building the blocks, not placing the blocks on one another, creating the blocks that would unleash this industry on this vast and beautiful country. So in the second time, when he goes to watch the movie with his wife, he tries to speak to the guy who's running the projector, and he gets turned away like very rudely. And they leave the theater, and they're sitting on the beach. And there is something about me and movies that have like these scenes with the beach. But this is if you guys have not watched Cycle, please check it out. That also has a fantastic scene on the beach. And it's just something which I think is very dear to Indian filmmaking. You will see a beach scene in The Namesake. You will see it in yeah, well, it's not a beach scene, but an ocean scene in Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara. There is something about Indian storytelling, and being near the waves and being near the coastal area. But you get to see that that these two, that this couple is sitting, on some kind of broken log or something, and they're watching their sons play. And you get to see these little details, like the newspaper that wraps up the peanuts that they're eating. And this is a very typical beach food that is very popular in India, where they, like, roast peanuts and then they'll put it in, wrap it in newspaper. It is in the Kesari newspaper, which was uh, Mr. Tirak's published newspaper, which spoke about the Indian freedom struggle and all the atrocities of the British rule. And he was one of the leading revolutionaries of India. And you get to see Dada Saheb holding that newspaper and looking at the title and realizing that in that moment, whatever he does, he will face a lot of opposition. Whatever he does, he will face a lot of struggle. And he tells his wife, "So I've decided to start printing again." And she says, "Oh, that's fantastic." And he's like, "What if the movie that you just saw, instead of like British stories, what if you saw an Indian story? It had Indian folk tales." And she goes, "Oh, I would love to watch something like that." And just on the basis of that, that's his target audience, his wife. He just tests with his wife, like, would you watch a movie that had Indian folklore, Indian folk tales in it, rather than, the British stories that we just watched? And she goes, "Oh my gosh, I would love that." And because, they don't have the problem of sound, because, no movies had sound and dialogue at that point of time, it seemed like something very achievable, because you wouldn't have to worry about, translating it, making it global, etc., etc. So she goes, "Oh, why do you ask?" And he's like, "I think we should make this moving picture." And she goes, "You just said you wanted to get back to publishing and printing." And his response is very simple: "It's a kind of publishing, making movies." And she goes, "Oh, okay, then we can do that." Look at the level of trust these two have, when a man just kind of announces, "Oh, making movies is very similar to publishing and print press," and his wife going, "Oh, okay, then fine, then you teach me and we'll figure it out." And the whole exchange is my favorite scene in the movie, because it shows that when two people, understand that something is a good thing, how easy it is for them to come to a decision to pursue that idea, to pursue the fact that they can, in fact, make something truly innovative out of this. And that's where we get to see the beginning of the makings of the Indian film industry, because he then starts kind of looking around, rummaging around the house to see how much money he can invest in making a movie, because he can't just make a movie, he has to study about it. And he realizes that, and his wife gives the last of his savings to him, and he's like, "This won't even be enough to study cinema, let alone make a movie." So he figures out, he goes to the local shop, he gets like all the books he can, the secondhand books he can, he studies from them. He keeps going back to the picture palace, he keeps watching movies, and then he convinces the guy who runs the projector to show him how the projector works and how that machine works, which runs the reel. So there is a lot of beauty to the way this man approaches filmmaking. It's not as simple as, "Oh, I'm just going to like find someone to get me a camera so I can start shooting a movie." It's not as simple as that. He decides to study about it as much as he can within the resources he has, to the point that he even goes blind temporarily, because he spent so much time staring at the screen and reading books, that his wife and sons get worried and they call the doctor, and it turns out it's a temporary issue. But for a moment over there, his son and everybody are really scared, and there's this beautiful exchange between him and his older son Bhalchandra, played by a very, very talented, like the actors. I'm going to list their names at the end of the video, but the actors are some of the greatest star cast that you will see in Indian cinema, in Marathi cinema, where you just see a bunch of people so naturally talented with acting, where it seems like this is definitely the Farke family. This is definitely exactly how they must have been, and you will not for a second feel that you're in a movie. You'll actually think it's a documentary. It's so well done. And well, coming back, and Bhalchandra kind of tells his father, like, don't worry, we'll figure it out. And Dada Sahib tells us, like, I I can't see, like, what how am I going to do anything? What how am I going to like build anything? And his son says, don't worry, I'll take up another job. And Dada Sahib's reaction to that is a true testament to the Indian passion and Indian grit when it comes to anything. And he says, if you take up a second job, who's going to make the movie? His priority and his focus is so undeterred, even in that scary moment where he's like, okay, but that doesn't help us. We still have to make this movie somehow, and we have to be the people to be the pioneers in this. So he slowly starts kind of, you know, getting people to see his side, like kind of convincing people why this is probably a good idea. And he manages to find ways to sponsor his own education. And there's this very cute montage where he starts selling the furniture from his house. And the house is almost empty, and the wife is kind of like given up to a point where it's like, oh my god, like this man's gonna sell everything. And there is this amazing scene where all the neighbors are kind of gathered into his house, and he doesn't know what's going on. And one of them says, oh, we heard about you having to sell all your furniture. We're so sorry. And they were all sobbing like it was a funeral. And he immediately lost his temper. Said, what is wrong with you people? It's just furniture. We can live without furniture. And that that scene is so funny to me because it's so serious. Like it's the first time in the movie, it's really serious, and then it immediately gets diffused by Dada Sahib's impatience and intolerance towards these people who are attached to like silly things like furniture. And his friends even try to kind of put him in a mental hospital because they think him trying to make movies makes him a person who's unstable. So he, of course, like through friendships and connects and network, he has a lot of goodwill in the community because he ran a very successful publishing business. So this is a man who knows how to run a business clearly, and he manages to get a small loan to travel to UK and meet a filmmaker, a name that he saw in one of the books that he bought, in one of the magazines that he bought. And on the day of him leaving, my favorite dialogue in this movie is he kind of stops and he looks at his wife and says, all of this is happening just because of you. And these little moments, which are neo romantic in nature because they're not typical of Indian cinema. Indian cinema has grand gestures and big surprise entries of the hero where he sings and he dances and he charms his heroine. But this is about a married couple, so you're not charming anymore. But my God, if that moment doesn't beat out, I guess 99% of the romantic moments that exist in Indian cinema, I don't know. I mean, I'll eat my words, but that moment is so beautiful where he stops before he leaves and he gives her full credit for what's happening because and he's right. He can do what he's doing. He can persuade what he is pursuing because he is supported by a woman who loves him, who believes in him so much that she doesn't even second guess this journey of his. And on his way to the ship, the man who's investing in him finds out that he doesn't have any contacts in the UK. He just has his name and his address of his company. So he's just going to barge in and find this UK director and ask him to teach him about movie making. So the time over there is again really, really picturesque. It is some of the greatest cinematography you will see. It the entire movie is just beautifully made. I mean, it's so picturesque and so colorful, and it makes you feel extremely overwhelmed with emotions because it depicts a simpler time. It depicts a time where things were very, very endearing and very sweet. And it didn't have, the high tech glam that you'll see. It didn't have, like I watched John Wick 4 recently, and it's a cinematographic masterpiece. But there is so much technology in there that you can kind of, you kind of expect for the God views angle to exist, and the side profile angle to exist, and there's so much to that kind of filmmaking which can only exist in this time because it is about technology. But imagine making a movie where, there isn't anything glamorous to show off. There isn't like a cool fight sequence. It's just a man and his journey in a new country. And he has like a scarf wrapped around his face because it's so cold. And he accidentally meets another Indian man who offers to make him vegetarian meals. And he barges into this director's office that he finds the address of and says, I am Dhuniraj Phalke from India and I would like to make movies. Will you help me? And that's his pitch. It's like, I would like to make movies. Can you help me do it, because I'm willing to learn if you'll teach me. And this man teaches him everything. He teaches him how the editing happens, how the film development happens. He like Dada Sahib is very eccentric too, because he sees a man barge into his office, and instead of questions like, how dare you walk in here, who are you, he says, okay, but first, would you like to have some tea? And you get to see when two people who are the same kind of passionate about their work, have the same kind of crazy love for their work, magic happens. Because this man, instead of hoarding his knowledge, instead of seeing an Indian man in his office and driving him away, says, yes, of course I'll help you. Because when you love the art, when you love the skill that you have developed or that you have stumbled upon, it doesn't matter who you work with as long as you get to work. And that's the beauty of the story. I am going to try my best to not spoil, because I mean, if it's about a real person, so I don't really know how much I can spoil, but there are these great moments in this movie that make you realize the enormity of the journey of Dada Sahib, of the stuff he endured, because he was the first to do it. And when you are a pioneer, when you're the first to do something, you not only have to provide an end result, you also have to set up the path of how to do this. And he pretty much created the blueprint of for any filmmaker in this world, in the world of Indian cinema. And that's why he is a giant in not in just Indian cinema, but in the concept of Indian industries, because he did something where no one else knew how to do it. And when he returns to India, he manages to get a loan. His wife pawns off her jewelry, even though her husband tells her not to do that. But she's like, no, I wanted to. And they immediately start putting out ads. They look for people um, to kind of become heroes and actors and actresses. And there's this very amazing scene where it says this movie is has no sound, so people who are unable to speak or hear, they can also act in this movie. So please do show up. And I've spoken about this actor before. His name is Bhau Kadam, and he plays this character who cannot hear or speak, and he and he reads that that even with that disability, he can still participate and still become an actor. And he kind of gives a very bad audition to Dada Sahib, and he's just like doing these very overt, exaggerated actions. And Dada Sahib kind of smiles, because it's such a fantastic scene, because it's two people who are truly faking it, right? There is this character who has come for an audition, has never acted in his life, and then there is Dada Sai, who has never directed in his life, and two people who are truly faking their way to this come face to face with each other. And Dada Saib goes, well, maybe not as an actor, but I can definitely hire you to work in my team. And that's how he gathers one person after the other. There is a fantastic sequence about him finding a female actress, because he says, that the female um the character that is going to be the heroine in his movie. So he decides to make the movie on Harishchandra. and Raja Harishchandra would be played by one of the male actors, obviously, but his queen, Queen Taramati, would have to be played by a female only. Like that was Dada Saheb's insistence. That's what he wanted. So he goes everywhere looking for actresses everywhere. He even goes to brothels to find actresses over there. But acting in a movie was such a foreign and alien concept. It was almost considered an evil thing. So no one was ready to work with him. And he finally stumbled upon a waiter who had like a slim figure. And he's like, you know what, you can be Taravati. And they, the, the way this movie comes about, the way the casting comes about is basically a bunch of non-actors who have never acted in their life because he cannot afford, theater actors on the budget he's on. So he makes them method act. If you're a priest, you should be meditating in the morning. If you are playing the woman's role, which the waiter was, he's like, okay, go and follow my wife around and imitate her gestures, because it's not easy to be a woman. You have to look very feminine. You cannot look like a man on the screen because it's the large screen. And everything about his movie making is so endearing and so beautiful, because you understand immediately from the director's perspective that he could have shown his struggle. He could have tried to get us, to be sympathetic towards Dada Saheb. But in fact, what he does is he makes us feel inspired and drawn and allured by this character. Because everything Dada Saheb does, no matter what challenge he faces, he bears it with a smile, and he reinvents himself, and he changes his whole idea of how he's going to go about achieving his goal. His wife, she's the editor. She also does a little bit of assistant director work. She does, of course, she's responsible for the upkeep and the maintenance of the staff and crew. And Dada Sahib kind of realizes that the workload is very large, so he calls upon his friend who is a priest, and he knows him from the times when the both of them, stumbled upon still life photography, and he knows that a man who could take great photographs could also be very good at directing. And this comes from a time where that business failed because there were a lot of people who had a blind superstition that if you took a photograph with a camera, the camera would suck out your soul. So basically, these are two friends who embarked on a business at some point and that business failed. And now they've come to another version of photography. And his letter literally says, I'm writing this letter to you because I need a person to help me out. I have decided to start a new business venture. I would like to tell you about it in detail. If you are alive, please come. and and this is how you know that these are two very close friends who can talk that way to each other. And this man shows up, and because everybody's method acting, there's this hilarious scene where he just sees a bunch of men dressed, in women's clothes, uh, and he's so confused as to why there are so many women walking around, in a courtyard. And that's how he meets his friend finally, and they see the camera for the first time, the where they are going to shoot the video. And the rest of the movie kind of walks you down the whole process of the movie making, right up till when they go into production, when they release it in a theater, how they market it to people, because a lot of Indians at that point of time didn't even know what a movie was. So they did live shows on the corner of, of all the local streets. They put out advertisements in newspapers, but the main thing they did was they would, what we know today as trailers, they would kind of put up a short skit from the movie and act that out for the audience and go, if you want to watch this on, a movie, on a movie screen, on a large screen where you get to see moving pictures, please come join us at this theater. And the whole movie, of course, it's not just about that. There are a bunch of other things that happen, and I don't want to spoil those things for you, because that's the movie's hilarious. It's endearing, it's sweet, it's uplifting, and it is custom made for people who love cinema, who admire the makings of movies, who admire the origin of cinema. And anyone who is a history buff, anyone who cares about how, cinema even originates and how movies were made in a time there wasn't sound, in a time there wasn't fancy editing software, there wasn't, motion sensitive cameras and stuff like that. This isn't a time where there were no selfie sticks, guys. Like, there was no technology to make movies in the way we make them today. And in spite of that, movies existed. In spite of that, movies thrived and were popular, and people loved them and adored them. And I believe that if you watch Harish Chandrachi Factory, you will feel joy, obviously. You will feel comfort, and you will understand the magnanimity of Indian cinema. And you will understand the beauty, the grace, the passion of Indian cinema. So please, please, please watch Harishandrachi Factory right away. Let me know what you think about it. And do let me know if you would like me to review scenes from the movie, because the movie is, it's phenomenal. If I go into every scene, it'll take me forever. So do let me know what you think about this movie once you watched it. And if you've already watched it, in the comments, share with me what your favorite scene was, and I am going to do my best to incorporate that in the next couple of videos. I intend on doing another video about the top scenes from movies with the hard conversations, and this movie has lots of them. So please, please, please check out our channel. We've done some really good reviews. We've reviewed some of the very popular stuff that's coming out. We did Succession. We are going to do another Indian movie next week. Do watch the space for that. And anyone who's watching any of the popular shows like Succession or Barry, do let us know if you want us to talk in detail about a particular scene. And do remember that I love you. This is Suri with Cremechiss, telling you to keep watching movies and to keep giving us your love. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.